Warm greetings to all the attendees present over here. I hope I'm audible.
Yes, you are.
Okay, thank you for the confirmation. I, Sonali Umanat, on the behalf of the Biology Society, or TBS, welcome you all to today's session of book discussion on the topic on the book, The Curse of the Self, written by Mark Leary. The Biology Society is a society consisting of biology enthusiasts who come together to share their interests and also conduct various webinars and events. To know more about our society, you may visit our Linktree website. And to become a member, you may fill in the membership form. The links to both of these will be put in the chat box shortly. In today's session, we'll be discussing chapter 6, 7, and 8. In all these chapters, we'll be majorly looking upon what the author calls the curse and the neurological aspects of it. So the recording for the previous sessions have been uploaded on YouTube, and you can also check them out if you're interested. The links will be put in the chat box. Our speakers for today are Karen and Mohabbat. Karen will be taking up chapter 6 and 8. Mohabbat will be taking up chapter 7. It's a humble request to all the attendees present here to voice your opinions by unmuting or by putting your opinion in the chat box. With this, I would like to give it to the first speaker, Karen.
Good evening, everyone. I hope you all had a nice day till now, and we hope the session will make it better. So coming to chapter 6, how many of you have actually read the chapter? If you haven't, it's fine, but just a Y for yes and an N for no. You can put it in the chat box. Okay. Anyone who has read it? Okay, you can keep replying, and I'll just start by giving a brief overview. So chapter 6 is titled Risking Life and Limb. So basically it talks about the risk-taking behavior that humans exhibit. And this is in contrast to animals which do not take any risk without it having a survival benefit. But humans, we are well aware of all the crazy things we do and the major reason for that is mostly to impress other people or fit into a peer group. And this chapter describes the role that the self plays in this. So the chapter starts off with this anecdote about a small army camp in Alamo, which is in the border of Mexico. So this took place in the 1800s, but it's a really relatable story that has taken place in many wars. So there was this small camp and they were taking on an army camp, then they were hugely outnumbered. But still the people of this army camp, they stayed put and they were willing to risk their lives in order to, take part in the war. Now, this, if you can see, doesn't possess any survival advantage for themselves or even for their immediate community as a whole, but they felt affiliated to the war. Now, their motivation was mostly because war at that time, it had a lot of honor associated. People in the army were considered very gallant and all that. So, they kept their reputation on a pedestal. They risked their lives in order to protect their reputation. And that's what I'll just read out this passage here. It says, in part, the men in the Alamo stayed to fight because they could imagine how they would be regarded if they fled. Again, this is where the self comes in. So the self is what allows them to imagine what other people think of themselves. So in their mind, they played out a scenario in which, they take a step back and they, back out of the war. Then they imagine how other people would view them. And that is against like the societal values at that time. And they did not want to face the consequences of that action. They did not want to face the criticism of the community as a whole. And it was that drove them to, stay put and risk their lives in the war. So concerns surrounding their egos and public image were so strong that it held sway over their own sense of self-preservation. Now, this example may be at a very high level, but at a lower level, we see this in everyday lives. And it goes on to say that virtually everyone has engaged in dangerous, potentially self threatening behaviors because they thought that doing so might make a desired impression on other people or bolster their ego. So, again, some examples like, that hazing thing that people have, or, um, you know, the, okay, I'm not getting the word, how seniors, make juniors do certain things in order to get accepted into clubs, college clubs, and all that. So this involves usually dangerous behavior like, jumping into a pool and all that. But people still do it, even though it places their lives in risk in order to be accepted. So ragging, yeah, that was a word. So what do you guys think about this? Do you see any biological advantage of, gaining acceptance in this regard? And again, do animals do this? Just thoughts based on, the passage here and risk taking in general. What do you guys think? In a group of lions. Okay. Yeah.
I think like the way Tejas mentioned, we can see the behavioral aspect of it, animal behavior. And also when we can notice this in animals as well as humans, that when we are in a group and we try to stand out, we get a mental satisfaction that we are standing out of the group, things like that. And please read out Saiteja's comment.
Yeah. Okay. So generally monkeys like in herds and the normal monkeys may pick on an albino monkey. Oh, interesting. So, kind of outcasting someone that's different, it seems to be like conserved it throughout the animal kingdom. We are not independent in that aspect. And in a group of lions, is that like for the alpha male position? Okay, for getting the female or to join the herd. All right. And again, what advantage that possess? Why do we feel the need to belong to a community? Safety, right? So indirectly, it has a survival advantage, right? Okay. So yeah, I think like when I read it, I was thinking a lot of the things like our brain is involved millions of years ago, and the modern society is very different from the communities then. Of course, the lifestyle that we lead now is totally different. But still, our brains, we have the reptile brain element that is, used to prehistoric lifestyle. And this need to, please the community in order to belong, in order to gain safety, in order to, assure your place in the community. That I think is what leads us to, try to fit into modern day peer groups and engage in these life threatening activities too. So wait, let me just move on to the specific points given in this chapter. Yeah, so it covers four main areas. One is taking risks in order to make a point, all the behavior that people engage in order to, appease the community around them. Two is this effort taken to belong. It doesn't even have to be active, as in taking risks. It can also be passive in the sense that you don't take precautions when you're engaging in normal routine activities, like say not wearing a helmet when you get on a scooter, not wearing knee pads when you're going roller skating, that kind of things, because this might make you seem wimpy or overly cautious. And in society right now, we do value bravery and all that. And even if it's not an active effort, like going out and jumping off a cliff for bungee jumping and all that, it can be a passive effort, like not taking precautions in order to not seem overly cautious. There was an experiment about this, which I'll come to later. And because of this, like the only reason we do all of this, according to the book, is because the self constantly monitors what other people think of us, and it makes us alter our behavior in order to appease them. But this self talk can also be very destructive, and it can really be overwhelming. So we engage in behavior that kind of silence that voice. And this behavior again can either be positive or negative. And at last, of course, it talks about the paradox of the self. Okay, Shraddha is starting to do artwork. Yeah, so the self, like I said previously, it gives us, like we've seen in the initial chapters, right? It allows us to plan for the future, set goals. But it's the same self that, kind of forces us to engage in risky behavior in order to satisfy the people around us. So again, it's a paradox. So, okay, coming back to the chat box, has anyone actually read the chapter? Right now, we still evolving. I guess so. That's debatable. I think there are a group of scientists that say that the rate of evolution for us has slowed down. Okay. And again, has anyone read the chapter? Okay, I'll take that as a no for now. Moving on to the first thing. Okay, fine. So I'll state a statistic. Approximately 25% of both male and female American respondents indicated that they had driven dangerously in order to make an impression on other people. So I also read another statistic in this. So of course, the rate of traffic accidents, they are higher among teenagers. And this rate actually increases when the number of people in the car are more. So this is really alarming, right? Because this puts more lives at risk, but at the same time, it's the presence of more people in the car that actually makes the driver engage in risky behavior in the first place. So it's really something to think about. And again, this passage gives the role of the self. So the self is the one that allows us to imagine how we are seen by other people. So it acts like a projector in your head and selects a person and tries to find out how they view you. And based on that, it anticipates how they will react to our behavior. And we think about how we want them to view us. And after that, we concern ourselves with altering our behavior in order to make a good impression on them. So, and actually, in the philosophy channel, this discussion was going on about how Jay Shetty uses this quote a lot. I am not what I think I am. I am not what you think I am. I am what I think you think I am. So, any thoughts on this? Again, this kind of relates to Yeah, it wasn't me. I just quoted Jay Shetty quoting someone else. Okay, meaning individually separate and distinct. Okay, Mohabbat, I missed. Okay, I missed the discussion in the chat box. Is evolution a continuous process or a discrete process? Yeah, it was. It blew my mind the first time I heard it. Okay. Evolution, continuous and discrete. That I'm not sure of. Okay, wait, what was the reason behind asking if evolution is continuous or discrete? Pages? I missed which part you guys spoke that. Okay, why is evolution even here? That I'm not sure, but everything in biology, only makes sense in light of evolution. Okay, yeah, I'll move on to the next part, which is, like I said, the passive action of just not taking precautions, even if it puts you at risk, just to, appear more favorably. So there was this experiment that was mentioned in the book. It was about, it was a case study, and they had different groups. And the results of this experiment was different for males and females. So I'll let you guess after I describe the experiment. So one group, okay, the experiment was they had to work with potentially dangerous chemicals. And before entering the lab, there was a series of safety equipment, goggles, gloves, other safety gear. And the respondents were allowed to pick whatever they wanted, whatever they felt was necessary, and equip themselves and then go in. So they could wear only goggles and go in, or they could wear the whole gear, goggles, gloves, the full suit, and then go in. And they were divided into groups. The difference between the groups was one group was told that the other members of their group already saw them as very cautious. So this was the mindset with which one group did the experiment. And the other group, they were told that the other members just saw them as averagely cautious. So that was the only experimental element introduced. And then the people's reactions was observed. So how do you guys think this affected them? What did you think were the results of the experiment?
Wasn't there a control for this experiment? Like with no mentioning about what other people thought.
Okay, maybe it wasn't mentioned in the book.
Because in every experiment, control is necessary and important aspect that
You're
we
right.
need to consider. Because that sets ground zero for us whenever we do an experiment.
Yeah, I think the results were mentioned for these two. So I'm not sure about the control. And any guesses? Which group do you think, you know, took more precautions? Was the experiment clear? Group one. It would seem like that. Other responses? And again, is the experiment clear? Just one group was told that they were perceived as very cautious, too cautious, in fact. And the other group was just, okay, G12. When I read it, I thought it was G12. Instinctively, that seems like, okay, so actually the members of group 1 took less precautions. They took up less safety care because, of course, this is the self coming in right now. The self is listening to it being told that it's already seen as overcautious, and being overcautious is not favorable. So now it's telling you to alter your behavior in order to seem normal. So this is why the people who are like, I'm already too cautious, so I should take less precautions than I normally would. So that was the thing. These people wore less safety gear and then the ones in the other group. The other group pretty much acted as they normally would have. And this was the results observed in males when the same thing was done with respect to the female participants of the group. When the average number was compared, they saw that the information about whether they were perceived as overly cautious or averagely cautious, this did not make a difference in the female groups, but it did make a difference in the male groups. So this is another thing to think about. What do you guys feel about this? What do you think could be the reason between the difference observed in the male and female groups? Is it like societal standards like prefer that males be more risk taking and females be more cautious? That could be one thing. So why did you guys feel it was group 1 then? And if anyone can unmute and speak, that would be good. I've been listening to my voice way too long.
I felt it's group 1 because I thought, like, see, if they don't act cautious enough later, they might be perceived wrongly by others. So probably they might be conscious about that. So basically being conscious about the society. And so yeah, that's why I felt they're going to take up all the equipments and things like that and do what and be the proof of whatever people think they are.
Oh, that's interesting. So it's like, okay, because they already think that, that seems like the right thing to do. Nice. Or self-embarrassment. Okay. Right, then we'll move on to the next slide. So yeah, this is fleeing the curse of the self. So in order to quiet that voice in their head that's always telling them what to do, that's always, kind of judging them and telling them what other people think of them. So people engage in activities in order to quiet that voice, basically subdue the self. And how do you do that? Of course, the self takes up cognitive resources. So if you engage in other activities that completely engage your cognitive resources, then you can have a brief relief from the self. So this is why people watch television, listen to music, exercise, meditate, have sex, because during these activities you won't have enough mental resources at the moment to also self-reflect. So this of course, coming to pleasure seeking activities in general, I was just going through some things. Yeah, so the reward circuit of the basal ganglia, this is overactivated when people take alcohol, take drugs, and of course that's how addiction and all comes in. But yeah, what did you guys think is the evolutionary basis of the existence of this reward system? Because, and does someone know more about the reward circuit? What should we do not to escape? Okay. interesting. Of course, like not if you're bored, you'll definitely find yourself thinking too much. If you're not engaged in any activity at present, then the self will come in and, occupy the full space. I think lack of activity. Okay, I understand why he's asking that because the list here basically mentions most of what we do on a regular basis. Yeah, coming back. So, what do you guys think is the evolutionary basis of the existence of this reward circuit in the brain? Was the question clear? Like, say, prehistoric humans. Yeah, so like the reason we love sweets so much is because prehistorically, whenever someone came across, of course, food was scarce. It wasn't hoarded anywhere. They had to go and search for food. So whenever they found something that had a lot of fat content, they felt the need to gorge on it because it provided enough energy at that point, and they didn't know, like they had to last for the whole journey that they would be making. So it kind of linked in the evolutionary mind that sweets are something that should be consumed in large proportions, and that's why we suffer even today. No Zomato in paste. Wait, what does that mean? That too. Dopamine release. Oh, no Zomato. Yes, exactly. No Zomato. You would have to walk miles and miles to get even a single fruit or water for that matter. Hmm. So again, so when the mind registers that this food um, gives you energy, this is something, it'll kind of store it as a memory so that whenever you encounter it again, you could get a signal to, indulge in it. This was as a way, a survival mechanism, but of course, nowadays that same reward circuit can be hijacked for disruptive behavior like addiction. And I mean, speaking more about it, speaking a bit about self control, the prefrontal cortex is the main part of the brain involved in self control. And the lack of functioning of this is again what makes us engage in these kind of behaviors. Okay, so coming to the fleeing of the curse of the self, if we take it to the extreme level, then is where suicide comes in. And in the initial discussions, also, we talked about how humans are the only animals who, you know, commit suicide. No other animal actually ends its life without reason. It might sacrifice itself for the tribe, but it wouldn't kill itself without any reason because it was depressed. At least research till now, this is what we can conclude. Do you guys have any thoughts on that about the emotional state of animals? Do you think they can get depressed too?
Actually, talking about that, it takes me to the first session. Like Parthasarathi sir had made a very nice point on that, and he mentioned about an incident that happened regarding a dolphin. I don't want to talk about the entire incident, it's a little disturbing, but yeah. So, in the end, that dolphin commits suicide out of depression. And yeah, like they just said, dogs do get depressed. Like we have seen so many incidents, so many movies made out of it. And uh, talking about how, especially if you see domestic animals, even cows for that matter, you can notice that they tend to leave their food or their source of energy if they lose their loved one or if they have gone through something very tragic, and dogs waiting for their owners and things like that. So I definitely think they are emotional. And I think their emotions are pure emotions, like pure.
Not corrupted by the human values that we have.
Yeah, because for a matter of fact, you know that people, humans who might have a thought of committing suicide, they can be saved. We can save them, at least with the power of somebody's words and by making them realize the worth of life. But the same thing, we can't do it with animals. I don't know why, but yeah, we can't do it with animals. And I don't know if animals even try to talk to their fellows about it. And because we don't know animal language yet, so maybe they communicate about it, maybe they have a different kind of sensations or vibrations that they give out at that point of time, because even now we know what are the symptoms of depression and how do we detect it in a human.
Right. Really struck me how you said their emotions are more pure and difficult to like quench. I think to Sonali, it's never too late to talk. You can stop someone's committing suicide even seconds before. So Anna mentioned this experiment that was performed on rodents. It's called this forced swimming test. So basically, rats or mice, both of them were used in different experiments. They were put in a tank in such a way that they could not hop out of it, and this tank was filled with water. So as soon as they were put inside, they just had to swim. They couldn't step to the bottom of the tank or jump out. They were trapped. They had to swim, and they were observed for about 6 minutes to see the extent of the effort they make to escape. So this was done by measuring their mobility. So like if they were observed for 4 minutes, then the amount of time they remained immobile, that is without swimming, without making an effort to get out, that was measured as immobility. And this was seen as an indicator of depression. So this experiment was done like once with the control, as they just mentioned, you have to have a control setup. And again, using testing them with antidepressants. So of course, they found that this varied based on the strain of the mice or the rat used, and the results strangely mirror like what you would find if this was done on humans. So yeah, I guess depression is seen throughout the animal kingdom, even though of course we agreed in the first session that animals don't have a self in the way that we've defined it in the book, but they do have a primitive self, and the root of their discomfort, I'm not sure if it is as a result of their self. What do you guys think? What is it? What would be the reason for animals to get depressed?
I think it just varies, like just the way it varies with humans. Like there can be multiple factors, majorly environmental factors, and maybe they're not happy with what they are or what they've come to. And that's I don't think that's I think that's pretty rare in animals, but I have noticed this one nature in I was reading about handicapped animals, and how they feel bad about it, and a difference in the animal behavior between a normal as in just not handicapped, that's it, I can't call it not normal, and this one and a dog or a cat having a disability or something like that. So they often have, if they belong to a group where they see their friends being adopted by others and things like that, um, they tend to have the thought that, oh, they will not get adopted because for obvious reasons. And the same thing is seen for handicapped kids in humans. So even handicapped kids, they share the same feeling that they think that they'll be the last one to be chosen or something like that. So I think there can be various factors for depression in that matter. And about the experiment that you just explained, was it like depression was measured using their mobility?
Yeah, so they measure the amount of time they spent swimming and the amount of time they were immobile, as in stationary. So based on the ratio of the two, they determined. Like
But how is that a
they used
factor?
this as
So
it's
actually,
basically
in these experiments, usually what they do is keep your subject mouse in contact with other people, like other mouse, and then there is some time period where they let it hang in, so that it feels like lonely. There are some certain protocols, like 15 hours they should be in contact with other mouse, like sneaking around, etc., etc. And usually these things are considered as a social behavior when they sneak they go over the body of other mouse, etc., having physical contact. While if they don't show any such behavior, they are considered as a depressed or maybe no social behavior issue. Usually in that way these things are reported.
okay, yeah, I missed that initial part of it. And also it's basically the effort made to escape, the effort made to preserve its own life.
Oh, okay, I got that. Then, so what else factors can we use for this? Like, if there was a similar experiment, like any of you have any of the ideas, like for maybe taking on any other animal you can take and
Uh,
factor.
Even one thing is done when they consider the gut microbiota. When people study how gut microbiota affects social behavior of mouse, same things are studied. Like this escape. Even there is a escape experiment. These experiments usually people study and do to consider the social behaviors. And like over a process, some norms have been fixed, like separating like a social mouse and a depressed mouse, or a mouse having with anxiety and other issues, I guess.
I'm curious to know about the gut microbiota now. Is it because
There are
they
Yeah,
lots
sure.
of
I
inflate?
have a paper on it. I will share that file.
Oh, please do. That'll help a lot.
also
Yeah.
got me to thinking that it's pretty twisted, these experiments. I mean, yeah, the ethics board has approved it, but still, you know, placing their, making them think their life is at risk, especially the swimming experiment. Kind of, yeah, it was eerie. Anyhow, we should talk about animal rights another day. Okay, so this was the last part of this chapter, the paradox of self. I'll just read out this paragraph. The same self mechanism that allows people to see into the future in order to anticipate the negative consequences of their behavior. Perhaps I shouldn't eat the rotten food with the slimy green mold growing on it. It also prompts them to do potentially disastrous and self destructive things in spite of those consequences. But my friends will think I'm cool if I eat it. I think, in a way, this summarizes the whole book that we've discussed till now, giving out the positive and the negative sides of the self. And yeah, when we were discussing this, it came across. Has anyone heard about the grandfather paradox? It's not
Yeah,
biology,
about
it's,
time machine.
yes, kind of. Do you remember the story? or the scenario?
to time machine, the grandfather paradox. Are you
Yeah.
talking about that?
Yeah. Do you wanna mention the scenario? Okay, I'll just say it out once again. It's like Mohammed said, it's involving a time machine. So there's this grandson. He uses a time machine to go back in time and kill his grandfather. This is the scenario. But see, do you guys find anything wrong with this? Anything like irrational about this just by listening to it? A grandson going back in time to kill his grandfather. Any logical flaw that you can identify in this statement?
Like, why not the father? Maybe.
Okay, but is it possible to kill the grandfather? First of
No,
all,
it's not.
why not?
But the moment you told me about
Then how will he can't exist?
One sec.
If his grandfather is dead and his father would be alive, nor he won't be God in this world. So logically, then again, he's so his grandfather is never dead. So again, he comes into existence. It's an infinite loop.
Yeah, this also blew my mind when I first heard about it. Did you guys get that? What Jesus said? His voice was breaking a bit. Yeah, so basically, in order for the grandson to exist,
Nandini
and
has mentioned it.
okay, yeah. Oh, yeah, Nandini's mentioned it. He won't exist if the grandfather dies. So, of course, the grandmother can die, and like they just said, it's an infinite. So, the reason I mention it here is because to bring out the self destructive nature of humans and the role that the self plays in that. It's like we saw in the previous topic, the need to flee from the self, and in the previous slides also, the need to gain acceptance, engaging in self destructive behavior for appeasing the self, basically. That is the paradox of the self. Any other thoughts on this? Of course, the existence of the self also helps us to do a lot of good things. It helps us to, most importantly, plan for the future and set goals and alter our behavior in such a way that we do achieve those goals. Yeah, that's all from my side. If you guys have any other thoughts or questions about this whole chapter? Okay. Okay. He just talks about some party that got cancelled. Stephen Hawking. Okay, so if not, then that's all for chapter 6. We can move on to chapter 7. Over to you, Mohammed. And stop sharing.
Doing very well. Can you guys see my screen?
Yeah, it's visible. Please put it in the presentation mode.
Uh, okay. Now it's full screen.
Yeah, it's visible.
Okay, so disclaimer. This presentation includes points discussed in the book, The Curse of the Self. The author is Mark Leary. We are making use of this material with the sole intention of the productive book discussion. No member of the Biology Society has neither intention of hurting someone's sentiments nor believes in any form of discrimination based on religion, caste, gender, or race. Kindly take the content positively. So, when a human take birth, he is already born with a religion, and most probably he'll be living his life with that religion, following the rituals, practices the religion assures. So the 14th Dalai Lama have something to say about religion. He says the very purpose of the religion is to control yourself and not to criticize others. So because religion is a very important part of a person, part of a life of a person, what do you guys think, how religion help us to live a happy life? So we can talk about how helps religion help us.
Yeah, statistically also it's been shown that people who practice a religion are happier than those who don't. And I think the reason for that is a lot of religions, they require us to practice some degree of self-control and not get too attached to the world. And I think those elements do help us live happier lives.
Okay. So Tej is saying it provides with the point and concentration and focus. Yeah, you are right. Yeah. All the people are not practicing any religion. Yeah. Yeah, but it is a even statistically, the data says that religious people live more happy life and they live longer. Yeah, less stress, less depression. It's a fact. Yeah.
Adding to Mohammed, it's just a personal opinion. A person might choose to be atheist or to follow certain religion. It is all perfect.
And I kind of agree with Tejas, because it's like it's just
Tejas, you are
suggested
not,
ways of
but I
maintaining the
could not
life.
hear him properly. Sorry. I could not hear him.
Tejas was just mentioning that it's a personal opinion, and that a person may or may not want, may or may not follow the same sets. Yeah, and Sai Teja, you're absolutely right. Belief of any kind is good, and any kind is good. Like, it depends upon your choice, um, and it's like a lifestyle that is suggested. For example, we had a great discussion on meditation and the effects of meditation and the benefits of meditation. And yes, belief is a great medicine. Believing in friends, doctors, scientists, it is a good medicine. And without trust, humanity does not exist together, right? And there are many scientific aspects to it, like how we spoke about meditation previously. I think Tejas made the point with respect to it as well, when it comes to concentration and focus. I think there are many, isn't it, Mohabbat? Like people do suggest meditation as a great form of cure. Like in the previously when Karen was explaining about depression, um, why can't we just discuss if animals do meditate or not?
Yeah, it's an interesting thing that whether animal, have any kind of uh, practices. Maybe we cannot, clearly observe. It would be interesting, but and if you talk about meditations, so it's a gift by the Eastern religions, and even the modern science says that it helps really. The the neurophysicians, they agree that medicines, it changes some neural networks in your some part of the brain, and yeah, it's helping, and we have proofs for this.
So
Yeah, science, any kind of belief is good, but does it justifiable that if a belief makes us happy and it gives pleasure, and the belief is wrong, so is it uh, is it good to keep, or we should abandon because it's not true? This chapter is also about morality, so can you elaborate this, that belief should be true, or it can be just for the purpose of the our pleasure and peace of mind?
I think there is no need for truth in a belief. Okay, if you believe you can get a seat in somewhere, and if you don't get in and you are not studying, does this belief need to be true or not?
I totally agree with Sai Teja's point. That was a great
Yeah,
example you can give.
procrastination.
It's up to you what to believe, right?
Yeah, yeah. So, but the belief should be true, or it can be false, as it's giving me pleasure. The morality part of the belief. Yeah, it needs a reason. Yeah, so we will go further in this chapter. So the religion, every religion, follows some practices and some rituals. So meditation and yoga, these are the essential aspects of Hinduism, Buddhism, and Taoism. Stop self-relevant thinking, leaving the mind empty to pursue spiritual insights or see the world as really it is. Meditators enter a state of consciousness in which the self is much quieter than the ordinary life, and reducing the degree to which their view of reality is contaminated by their concepts, judgments, attachments, and desires. So, what do you guys think about meditation, you can share your experience, and why too much thinking, you know, is considered not a good thing in religion, because an empty mind and less self-talk, like that. So I'll repeat that. Why too much thinking is not good for the in the religious perspective, in the mind boggling or chatter, mind chattering, too much thinking. So maybe any of you aren't practicing meditations. So we'll go further. So there are things like psychoactive drugs like LSD and magic mushrooms. Have you heard about these things? Especially the magic mushroom. Any of you? Yeah. So tell something about it. What you heard, and you know, can you, Karen, please tell us? Yeah, the hijack. Yeah. They show us a different reality. Yeah. So basically, I was listening to a podcast on YouTube, particularly the Lex Friedman podcast. He's a scientist in MIT. So he was sharing his experience of taking magic mushrooms. So he was saying that once he took a sufficient dose of magic mushroom, then he was sitting in the front of his house. The tree felt him so beautiful that, and it was not like that. That tree was seeing him in a different color. The leaves were green. The tree was as same, but uh, you know, yeah,
Oh,
the tree.
what do you guys think? Does these magic mushrooms treat with your neuroreceptors, imbalance them, or is it something to take with the hormonal changes, or is it something to relate with the the neuroreceptor release or some synaptic enhancement that might like lead to these images and unnecessary imagination? What do you guys think?
So maybe not unnecessary, because we should consider what person, whichever person, if magic mushroom takes, and what he sees. So he sees something, as I was saying that the podcaster saw the tree, and it felt so beautiful. Even he was crying, because the tree was same for all the years, but he never looked at the tree with this much attention. So it is not like that is unnecessary, but you know it makes us to think that in ordinary life we overlook so many things, like especially the nature. Nature in many senses is a very good architecture. And if you see, consciously, it's very beautiful. Yeah. And the magic mushroom helps us to see the world in another perspective. Yeah. Yeah, it does, changes our brain physiology. It does changes, but yeah, reality we experiences. Because, even in ordinary life, we are living with so many biases. And, while our upbringing, we, develop with so many, yeah, filters. Yeah. We see the things very differently. We should consider another aspects of things. And this is, as you were talking, that the brain physiology, yeah, that changes. Even, some neural networks in frontal lobe and the parietal lobe are, change. And so what is the result of these, change in neural physiology? So it basically it broader the, thinking. uh, the person who, goes through these changes, the person, you know so these are the result of a, very long practices of meditation, or the people who, say that they had mystical experiences. So then after, the people would be thinking in a more way. So yeah, so this integrates, you know then the person would not consider him in a, particular group, or he will not group him in any particular, boundary, like that. He will be free in, thinking. We can consider that he would be thinking all the goodness of all the world, like that. After that, lately in this chapter, the author talks about time. So what do you guys think about time? So time, in a metaphysics, it's even said it's, it's a very illusion. But the people who has the mystical experiences, or prolonged meditations, they think that, or they experience that the time for them is stopped, or it goes very slow, and they are outside of the time and in eternity. Yeah. So they perceive very differently time. And for a normal person, for us, we perceive, time very differently. In exams, the time goes very fast. We felt that time we have less time. And in other times, when we are little sad, or, we are missing something, or even when we are waiting for someone, like on a railway station, station, or we are when the time is moves very slowly. So in this, author says that time passes quickly when you are having fun, but it may be more accurate to say that time is simply immaterial when we don't monitor it. So authors talks about monitoring the time. If we give focus, uh, you know, then it would be very slow time, and this also suggests that why mystical people says or experience themselves out of time, experiencing time. Time is like a river that flows, it never flows back, and it ever flows fast. Maybe never flows fast, so it's constant. It's your perception that changes from time to time. Yeah, it's true. So guys, any other one? Anyone have something to say about whatever we talked in this chapter? It goes faster. Or we'll be seeing the next chapter. Yeah, time is relative. Yeah, in the physics. So illusion in metaphysics. Yeah, these questions are being things we are still answering. We are seeking for the answers. So guys, we'll be heading to the next chapter. Thank you.
Right, everyone. We'll move over to chapter 8 then. Okay, so chapter 8 is titled The Self Out of Control. So this chapter is basically, if you would have guessed it, about self-control. Okay, so what role does the self play in self-control? It has two features that plays a role in us being able to regulate ourselves and our behavior. So one is the ability to imagine ourselves in the future. So since we can play out future scenarios in our head, we can think about the consequences of our action before actually doing them. So in this way, it acts as a deterrent or a motivating factor to engage in certain activities based on the consequences of those activities in the future. And the second feature of the self is our ability to talk to ourselves. As in, even one is seeing the future, and the other is talking to ourselves in order to alter our behavior based on the future we would like to experience. Okay, so before we start, what do you guys think? Like, what is the role of biology in self control? What are some hormones or neurotransmitters that play a role in self control? Which part of the brain do you think plays a major role? Any opinions? Like which part of the brain is involved in rational thought?
I think you had mentioned it in the first, in chapter 6 itself, that it's the prefrontal cortex.
Okay, I wanted to know if anyone was actually capturing that point. Okay. All right. So yes, basically the prefrontal cortex majorly, and that's why like teenagers have trouble controlling themselves because their prefrontal cortex isn't mature yet, still developing. So yeah, these are the points covered in this chapter. And yeah, so basically there are elements given to self-control. These are self-regulation, which itself depends on self-awareness. Then it's setting up goals and standards, and transcending the immediate solution, which again is playing out future scenarios in our head. And this thing called self-control strength, which we'll talk about in detail in the coming slides. And yeah, I guess we can move over to the next slides. So these were two terms that I came across while reading the chapter that I want to discuss. One is called the self-attention index. So I'm gonna need you guys to do some math right now. Yeah, so we're basically going to find out why people feel very self-conscious when they're on a stage or performing in front of people. And this, let's say you are performing in a group of two. You and your friend are making a presentation in front of people. How does this vary from you? Let's say you're in a group singing choir. You are in a group of 50 people on the stage and there are 100 people. Your degree of self-awareness and stage fright would be different in both of the scenarios, right? In which one would you be more self-conscious? The one where you're presenting with just one other person, or the one where you're on stage with a huge group? Where would you be more nervous? Was that clear? The question? Okay, so I'll just move on to what the self-attention index is. It's basically like the scenario I mentioned. Let's say you and your friend are making a singing performance and you're performing in front of 100 people. So the formula for the self-attention index is the number of people in the other subgroup. In this case, it's the 100 people who are in the audience to the total number of people present, which means the total number of people in the audience is 100 plus you and your friend, which is 2. So it's 100 divided by 102. Can someone quickly do the calculation or even use a calculator to let me know what is 100 divided by 102? Yes. Yes, right. 0.98 rhythm. So this is why you'd feel super self-conscious when you're performing. Yeah, totally got it right. In front of a large group of people. So this again is used as a measure of self-awareness in different scenarios. And this is related to the next term, which I found very interesting. It's called de-individuation. So you would have seen in some like lynching scenarios or riots when there are a large group of people involved, when there is an individual associated with a large group, the way that they behave in that group, they wouldn't do the same actions if they were alone. So being a part of that group influences them, and there's a scientific basis behind that. I'll just read this out. Experimental research shows that anything that diminishes a person's sense of individuality can induce de-individuation. This includes, what are the things that reduce a person's sense of individuality? Includes wearing same uniforms, And of course, yeah, if their face is covered, something that diminishes their own identity and makes them a part of a group. And yeah, this, of course, is a huge societal issue. That's why people, if you're associated with the wrong group, then you'll be behaving in ways that you wouldn't have done alone. So, yeah. I'll just move a bit fast because we are running short of time. So, yeah, coming to self control strength. So, this is described as this it's kind of like a muscle. And, when we exercise too much, our muscles get tired. So, in the same way, if we exert our self control too much, then it's kind of like a depletable resource. Let's say you've been fasting from morning and suddenly at 9 p.m. your roommate comes and brings ice cream. It'll be very hard to resist the temptation then because you've been using your self control throughout the day. So, yeah, and this is a statistic. If has anyone heard of the marshmallow test? Yes, no, why, and the marshmallow test was conducted using a group of kids. Okay, so I'll just briefly talk about it. So, a group of kids between 4 to 6 years old, they were given these two options. One was they would get one marshmallow immediately if they choose to have it immediately. But if they wait for, let's half an hour with in the same room as the marshmallow being kept in front of them, then they would be offered two marshmallows. So, yeah, the experiment goes like this. A child is there, a 4 to 6 year old child. They're placed with the marshmallow in front of them. And the scientists will go out and they'll just be monitored for 30 minutes. If the child chooses to eat the marshmallow within that 30 minutes, then that is all. But if they can resist the temptation for 30 minutes, then they will get an additional marshmallow. So, this is a simple enough test, but the children and their responses were monitored and they were monitored over years. And their lifestyle, how they performed on standardized tests, how successful they were in the future, this kind of correlated with the degree of self control that they had. What do you guys think about this? Why do you think self control is associated with intelligence? Intelligence, in the sense that they've defined it, is performing well on standardized tests, earning a good income in later stages of life. What do you guys think is the link between intelligence?
Are these SATs really that perfect? Because you can easily fake these SATs
All
with
right, but
practice.
given the
With practice, you can easily fake it.
yeah, but it does require practice, no? I think that is kind of an answer. It's not that no one can crack the SATs, but the people who did exhibited a high degree of self control in the earlier stages of their life. All right, keep thinking about this and move over to the next slide. Okay, fighting self with self. This kind of relates to the paradox of the self, in, the destructive side of the self. And yeah, so again, I want to talk about the evolutionary biology perspective of this. The self did not evolve to exert the amount of control that we require of it in modern life. So imagine an ancient tribal community. They had their own clans, they had their own lifestyle. They would, get up, hunt, gather, consume their meals of the day, and then repeat. They were not exposed to the amount of temptations that we have in modern life. So again, this kind of correlates with the high rates of depression, anxiety, and other mental issues that we see in society today. Any thoughts on this? So there was another experiment conducted with rodents again. It's called the open maze test. So they were the rodents were placed in a maze setup and they had to escape. So their anxiety levels were monitored in that situation. So again, this got me to thinking about the difference between animals and us, how their anxiety levels raise when their life is threatened. But for us, in modern society, that's a lot of things that don't place our lives in danger, but still, like when we have to make decisions, when we have to make life altering decisions like which college to go to, which job to take, that gives us a lot of anxiety that is similar. It brings in adrenaline, it puts us in a fight or flight mode, similar to if our lives were actually in danger. And again, this causes a lot of problems.
I think it's also majorly because of our environmental factors again, because the even if we currently, at least, we live in a society which doesn't pressurize us a lot, but they directly or indirectly do it, even if they don't come in direct contact with us. Like now, especially, we have social media and things like that. So we keep, and also we have these thoughts which tell us to improve ourselves. The only challenge is you yourself, and things like that. So it gives us a thought that, oh yeah, we have to be better than our older versions. And so, although it's good for improvement, it's good for growth and things like that, but giving an undue amount of pressure just because of that, with the pressure of being better, is not right.
Again, the curse of the self. The self is always obsessed with, trying to monitor itself, trying to improve itself, especially in the scheme that Sonali mentioned. When we're exposed to a lot of self-help material. Yeah. Okay, quickly move ahead to the next point. Okay, so this is basically the summary of the chapter. Again, these are the elements of self-control. There are 4 elements, and if one of these elements fail, we would not be able to effectively control ourselves. So the first one is monitoring ourselves. Of course, this is where self-awareness and self-regulation play a role. Second is having clear goals, because if we don't have anything to work towards, then we won't have the motivation to exert ourselves and use self-control. Third is, it's related to having goals, be able to visualize the end product of these goals. So, mentally transcend the immediate situation to imagine long-term consequences of our behavior. And the last one is, even if all of these are practiced, we'll have to have enough mental energy, physical energy, emotional stability. All these make up self-control strength so that we can actually do the first 3 elements: override impulses, go against our desired behavior in order to get a more favorable outcome. So, yeah, that's all that I had on this huge chapter about self control. Does anyone have any other points to add or any questions? Okay, they just still talking. Yeah, that was about the SATs. Anyone else? Okay. If not, of course, if you get any points later, you can put it in the WhatsApp channels or the Discord channels and we can take it up from there. Sonali, I'll hand it over to you now.
Thank you, Karen, for that extremely good presentation. And I would also like to thank Mohabbat, who was the second speaker, for giving us in their opinion and also presenting the seventh chapter. Apart from this, I would like to thank all the attendees for attending today's session, and I hope you liked it. I hope you enjoyed it. In the end of the day, all of us have different opinions, and we must accept diversity. And if we hurt you in any form, or if any of the opinions was different from yours, we must take it positively, and let's move ahead. The next session will be with the author. That is the coming Sunday. That is the next Sunday, 19th, and for which the registrations will be there till the end of September 17th. I would want all of you to register. Please join us for the author session. And if you have any questions with the author, you can directly interact with him. And yeah, with this, I would like to put up the links for all the forms, website, membership forms, YouTube links, and also the feedback form. Your feedback means a lot to us because TBS is a society which aims to improve every time, and we take your feedbacks positively. So please give us your feedback. If there are no other questions or queries, or we may end the meeting. Thank you all.